our class, we have been studying the topics of race, class, and religion as things that make us different from the people around us.
I don't know a lot about Idaho, but I'm really interested to see what I find.
I was looking at some of the demographics of Twin Falls. I think mainly we'll find racial differences as the town is very much white, 90% white.
Talking to other people about race, they might not even really think about racism a lot because I know that your surroundings really do affect how you perceive who you are.
Class-wise, I'm really not sure what to expect.
We might meet a lot of people that have a lot of wealth, but I'm interested in looking into workers themselves and meeting people of different race.
There's corporate offices and corporation factories there, so there might be some really rich people, but at the same time, the median income is below the U.S. average.
When we go to Twin Falls, Idaho, I predict that we will find people who may or may not necessarily look like us, people who may or may not have the same experiences as us, and I'm really excited to see how that kind of plays into the way they view their own culture, the way that may shape their worldview.
The Uncovering Cultural Bias in America immersive course was designed to bring Bay School students outside of the so-called Bay Area bubble and gain a deeper understanding of cultures apart from the greater San Francisco Bay Area. We embarked on the 7-day trip to Twin Falls, Idaho, not knowing what we would discover or who we would meet. We challenged our own assumptions and biases of communities that are different from ours and viewed Twin Falls through the lenses of class, religion, and race. And here's what we found.
Twin Falls is in the middle between the better watered Boise River, where the city of Boise is located, about 120 miles from here, and the area of Pocatello, which is the Portneuf River Valley, which is about 120 miles from here.
So we have a reputation as being one of the most racist states in the country. A white, conservative place, and many people come here still with the idea of escaping what America is, this very diverse place.
In Twin Falls, we talked to local government officials, including City Manager Travis Rothweiler, about their priorities within the city of Twin Falls, as well as to find out some background of the city and its issues. When discussing the idea of power in Twin Falls, going to the government, which is designed to hold power for the people, is crucial in formulating an understanding of the power dynamics of the city.
Main priorities.
First would be among the city and our organization is about collaboration and improving our ability to do our job in serving our residents. And so from our perspective, the leadership of the city perspective, that to be is one of those first and foremost things that we're trying to do is improve the culture here, that we all work together, because many minds working together are better than that one smart guy at the top.
I would say it would be a combination of engaging our community, engaging our citizens on what we do and what we provide as a local government. As we continue to grow and the demands upon our city to provide a higher level of service are going to continue to grow, we're going to have to figure out a better way to educate our citizens on what those needs are and the importance of voting. Register and vote, because I had a good friend of mine tell me she forgot to vote, but really it probably didn't matter. And I figure if I had everybody in City Hall had one friend who just voted instead of not voting because they didn't think it mattered, the measure would have passed. So don't vote, don't discount that really is your way of having a voice in your own government.
About 6 years ago, we went out and we had a community conversation, which was really cool. I mean, we went out to groups, we had groups meet at our College of Southern Idaho. We listened to what their priorities were, what their concerns were. And I think what's really important, probably for us, is that we continue to have that community dialogue.
I really believe Twin Falls City government needs to find a way to continue to build its partnerships with the school district. We have great partnerships with, probably among the best partnerships that I think that we have out there with all the other local governments and some of the nonprofits and certainly the private sector. But I think that we need to find a way to make sure that we're all working on the exact same page for the exact same sheet of music and leveraging the resources to create the community that we all want to live in.
I ran in the city council election last year. Oh, wow. And I'm very surprised they weren't aware of that just down the street, because it was the same people. And I'm also the person that came before the city council and told them that you should really start considering all these marginalized voices that you're not including in the decision-making process. And then further stayed on that, kept going back and saying, hey, start this. Let's start this together. It's for the good of our whole community to include people. It's not just good for this group or that group. No, it's good. Like, inclusion of opinions is good for the status quo. Otherwise, there's stagnation. There's like a classism, an elitism. There's a caste system. There's the people that work but aren't part of the process and the people that decide for them. That's not unique to this area. That's by design. By design, when people are marginalized, they are separated from the decision-making process. The working class typically is kept further away from the decision table. So in Twin Falls, what's really unique is that we are a mixed economy of, mostly food and distribution. We have mostly 5 of our main, in Idaho, 5 of our main industries are food-related, ag and farm and dairy-related. That's every single day, to eat. That doesn't just stop to be discussed, or have an opinion on. So, no, they're not at the decision-making table. I think we are very, very slowly at the beginning of getting to that point where people who are marginalized are included in the decision-making process. An example of that would be we just formulated a diversity and inclusion committee, which the city was they pushed back against that request. They weren't on board at first, including our mayor, including our city manager, and it was not until we persisted as a coalition to get the city to say, okay, let's build this framework. And so this committee, this charter, we just drafted it 2 months ago. That's the first inclusion and diversity committee at the city government level in the state of Idaho. It's not like the demand wasn't there. It's just that those people there were not a priority. And when you have a group of people that are marginalized, they are also dehumanized, so you don't value their input. So I think we're in a very beginning stages of including people in that decision-making process. It's not like these people are new to our economy. Idaho, especially Twin Falls, has depended on migrant workers, refugee workers, seasonal workers since the beginning of really this city. It comes back to the fact that if a community is feeling like they aren't welcomed in this city, or if they are marginalized historically, generation after generation after generation, people know their place. They know where they're not welcomed. So you could be welcomed in that building right there to pay your power bill or your water bill through the city of Twin Falls. But that's as far as some people feel they have access to local government, because the psychology of being marginalized is you internalize that. And it becomes a part of your identity. It becomes part of your communal identity even, that the leaders look like this, the leaders come from this religion, the leaders have to be endorsed and selected by those that also are part of their community. And if anyone's outside of that, then they're an other, they're a person of color, or they're a minority or immigrant.
Do you feel like you have power in Twin Falls?
I have an advantage because I speak the language well. I've been here long enough to understand the culture, the bigger culture, the United States culture. I understand the way capitalism and the economy works. I've built a business that's allowed me a platform to connect with people in a very real way, very authentic way, good and bad. So in that sense, I would say I have an advantage. I wouldn't say I have the power. I don't know if anyone fresh off the plane or fresh off the boat coming to the United States within that 0 generation, like literally still rebuilding their life with their parents and their family after coming here as a refugee, could claim power. The type of power that I do have is grounded in being authentic and being able to connect with people in poverty, people who are struggling, people that are fighting for their lives through addiction, the power of not denying reality. Now, being in a position of influence, if that is something that I am in, I take that with great responsibility and humility. So that's a little bit different than I think being in a position of power. And you don't have to, there's a huge difference between getting elected and getting things done. So I ran in the city council election as the first refugee to run in an election in Idaho. Even though I was not elected, further we could go and mobilize and come back to the city and say, we want a diversity committee. We want an official structure built where people that are marginalized historically can actually come and influence decision making. Because the people are the community, all the people. And if we start only serving the needs of developers and the needs of, a work force as far as, just looking at a city through its economics, the people feel unheard and they feel like they're not connected. There's a low trust. We can prove that low trust and low connectivity to local government with our super low turnouts with voting. And why is that? How can people feel so disconnected or unheard by their local government? Kind of come back to reality. I mean, this is a very pro-voting values, conservative type of community. Like Idaho is known for its, proud kind of roots and conservatism and definitely having a true connection with government because, again, our industries, they are so dependent on the most fragile of laws, because you can't just put the cows and the food on pause. They have to be fed every day. That product has to be moved. It has to be exported. It can't just be clothing can be boxed up, but a lot of the stuff they're producing, it needs to move fast. Even if it's frozen, even if it's flash frozen, whatever, it has to move. It has to go out into the world. So we have to have really good diplomatic relations, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. The farms have really been impacted with new laws and regulations. So these things impact our industries immediately. We feel it immediately. It's not an afterward effect. The separation of families at the border resolution was just basically symbolic, saying hey, we don't like that. We condemn that. Okay, our family values, our human rights values, they don't fit what's happening. But yeah, when what we did was, as soon as they passed it in Boise, we literally copy-pasted the resolution, changed Boise to Twin Falls, and presented it in front of the city council. Literally, it was a copy-paste. And it went on this 5-week thing where they just were no, and then we kept going back, we mobilized. Can you symbolically make a statement? Can you just make a symbolic statement?
Yeah.
And they were just has nothing to do with Twin Falls. It isn't within our jurisdiction. At one of the meetings, one of the council members, I screamed at them. I said, shame on you guys, because this is, you say this is what the city's about. You say your strategic plan in the city is about being a humane and safe city, but you've got 80%, 90% of the workers that are here being uncared for and not represented. Oh, I was even drawn into a caricature. We haven't framed it yet. But I was drawn into a caricature beating like a dead horse is what one of them said because of family separation. And this is before the president signed to stop it. This is while it was like going on.
I kind of felt bad after seeing this. I thought it was a little bit thinner than this. So this is a very complex issue. When I say I don't know the facts, I know exactly what everybody else does.
Because he said, I have no idea what's going on at the southern border. Like, we don't know what's going on down there. And we're like, you get memos. I served on the school board here. It's an elected position too. And you get memos, even though that's education.
When I read the websites, Department of Homeland Security website, and I see the statistics, and then I read on Twitter, I read social media, what's going on.
We would get memos like if the president issues a new law, or if something like if a food is being like recalled, like you have to know it's a public seat. Like, you're a public servant. You're telling me you don't know, you don't watch the news? Like, you don't listen to, what are you doing all day? So he asked for me to be removed from the meeting. And the guy has 7 kids. Ooh. He has 7 kids. And we're like, you kidding me? You got 7 kids. And none of that like resonates with you, that kids are being separated from their families?
Trust me, I mean, if as a father, my kids were taken from me, it would break my heart. And so when I said, I don't know the facts, I'm in Twin Falls, Idaho. I don't feel that California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas should be telling me what to do in Twin Falls, Idaho. Likewise, Twin Falls, Idaho shouldn't be saying, this is what you should be doing, because I'm not there. My heart breaks for those families. My heart breaks for what was going on, and do I want to solve it? I do. But I don't think Twin Falls saying, hey, you should be doing this is going to do anything, especially since I'm not there.
When they are concerned with the most important thing to them, which is like human rights, families, and children, like that stuff's not even political. Like, how do you politicize rights of children? You gotta be some sicko to do that, you know? You gotta take ownership and be responsible as a community. And this community is like, just now, just slowly, tiny bit is like going to start doing that. You know, because people are speaking up.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. And not because I want to be ignorant, because there's so much information and so much misinformation out there. I think that if we really want to help, then we should be sending money, we should be sending resources, we should be reaching out to those that can actually help. And a sheet of paper that says, hey, do this, that's really not doing anything. And so that's why when I said, I don't know the facts, I'm not there. There's reports coming out that there's diseases going around. I read the Department of Homeland Security website, it's not stating any of that. I'm looking at it and it's saying that 83% of those children are unaccompanied minors. Okay, this doesn't say that. So, like I said, a very complex issue that's being simplified, and it was concerning to me. Do I think we need to do something? You better believe it. Immigration's a real issue, and unfortunately, since Reagan, it's just been the can's been kicked down the road, and we're living in a society right now that you guys will be dealing with and are dealing with, where we have people who have grown up here that aren't citizens. And what does that mean? What do we need to do with? And so we continually talk about it, but don't do anything. And so that's why when I said, okay, I don't know the facts, I would love to know them, and not from somebody's point of view, but actual factual information. I really like Leah, just so you know. We don't have, you know, we may have yelled at each other a little bit, but Leah and I have talked. I really like her. I don't have any issues with Leah.
He's never talked to me afterwards. He's never talked to me about anything ever afterwards. Do you want to ask me on camera? I'll tell you. I never talked to him afterwards. Everything he's talking about is like what the federal government's doing. The federal government affects all of Idaho too, not just California. And it's so strange to me, like, that he thinks that it's like non-issue to a community. But that's part of that disconnect, you know? It's part of that disconnect. It's easy to disconnect when you don't see people.
throughout the city of Twin Falls, religion was more insignificant than we had previously expected it to be. This is not to say that it wasn't important. However, all of the main problems we ran into were intersectional. The main officials of the government were either white, Christian, or both. We also based a large part of our research on conversations held with local bishop and city councilman Christopher Reed in order to formulate points for this documentary. Additionally, although we did not observe this issue while in Twin Falls, Muslim immigration to Twin Falls has been a major point of contention within the city. So even though religion did not play a main role in the issues we focused on while exploring Twin Falls, religion did play a role in intensifying the pre-existing conflicts in the town. In Twin Falls, we observed race and class to be more intersectional than San Francisco. We rarely were able to speak to or about any people of color in Twin Falls, with the exception of labor workers and refugees. As societies across the country are evolving and developing, Twin Falls and Idaho in general are starting to see the value in embracing diversity. Twin Falls has begun to recognize the importance of diversity within a society, not only as a working force, but in the community as a whole. In our class, we discussed the idea of racism and its definitions based upon the idea and definition of power. The concept of power over another group of people was prevalent in discussing the topic of cultural imposition. When a group of people assumes power over another, it impacts their identity and reiterates the internalized idea that they don't have a voice in their society. As history is repeated, it becomes harder for people who feel marginalized to reclaim their power. In the present day, Twin Falls, Idaho is beginning to amend their definitions, but the history and residue still remains.
Who holds the power?
Holds the power?
Yes.
Who holds the power?
Who holds the power in Twin Falls?
I'm not sure, really.
I don't know that there's any one group of people that you would say, well, they're really the ones pulling the strings.
I don't see there being any outsized power being held by a single individual.
I think that the school district holds quite a bit of power, as well as the elected officials.
I think it's a combination, well, I guess in any city, I think it's a combination of the governance, but then also the people.
The people?
I think the community does.
The community holds the most of the power. I mean, there's obviously legislative power from the state and the federal government, and then municipal power within that. But I feel like the community really makes a lot of the decisions for the well-being of the town and the city.
It's all of the individuals that come together to make Twin Falls such a great community. Our larger businesses in the area, they are community supporters, community members. Really do hold the power and drive the way Twin Falls is going to change and move into the future.
What drives Twin Falls is its economy.
And so to some extent, some of those larger players maybe have more impact than smaller businesses or individuals, but I don't know that I feel comfortable saying that they hold the power.
The working class has the power. The farmers, the dairymen, it's not really held in politics, it's more held on a local level, definitely in Idaho. So
the working class, laborers, the migrants, and the irreplaceable agricultural workforce that if they did not show up to work 1 or 2 or 3 days, the city and all of the dependent factories that are dairy like Chobani or all of the economy would be affected. So if you can freeze an economy, you have the power. So the people that make decisions, you could say they have the power, but actually I feel who holds the power in Twin Falls are the laborers.
The people hold the power, but in our recent elections, very few people choose to participate. And I think that's kind of a tragedy that the people have relinquished their power thinking that someone else will do it. And so consequently, if I had to think of who holds it currently, I'm afraid we're in a situation where the people who really hold it and deserve it and are entitled to it have relinquished it to apathy. And consequently, who knows who has the power? And that's even a more dangerous situation than if you actually knew who had it and they were potentially not using it appropriately. So that's the answer I'm going to go with. I think apathy has paralyzed us, especially in regard to power. And while there is an opportunity for us, the people, to decide who's in power, we have somehow relinquished that responsibility, thinking that someone else will decide, or whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And that's a real tragedy, being as we're a democracy and we're not exercising our right we the people, to govern ourselves.
Who do I believe holds the power in Twin Falls, Idaho? From my trip in Idaho, I noticed that Idaho and Twin Falls in general, their economics thrives on the success of agriculture. And agriculture is very dependent on this capitalistic system. And the foundation of capitalism is the working class, the people who are actually getting their hands dirty and are doing the work, milking the cow, getting all the product that they need to make a profit for the upper class. So in that sense, I think the working class has a lot of power, because without them, the whole system just crumbles to the ground.
The main takeaway I got was that people are given or assumed to have power, but they don't exercise it.
I think the real people who have the power in Twin Falls are the corporations, specifically Cliff, Glanbia, Chobani, the big three in the area, and the city council, because they are the ones who decide what goes on in the city.
It would be really hard for any sort of money to be made. It would be really hard for businesses to run, because they didn't have the people in the working class laying the groundwork for their corporations. And I feel like because of that, they should be given more power, and they should be given the opportunity to move up and have more social mobility, but they don't, and they're so afraid of the different facets of the people who they assume to have power that they are afraid of the repercussions and will not do anything to change where they are. In general, power is something where if you can influence people, whether it may be with money or different forms of status, in a sort of class, religion, racial kind of way, it makes it a lot easier to exercise your power. And things like now the media, especially with social media, where anyone can reach out to a large number of people and reach a whole lot more people, it's easier to have power. And it's very important to talk about how we use that power, how we use our influence on other people.
In a society, the people who I believe hold the power are the people who have a different perspective than everybody else in a community. They have the power to change how a system is run because they have a different perspective. And to that sense, I believe that people who have a lot of power, the people who are able to change their perspective and understand another idea or perspective that they never had before. Because with doing that, they can change a whole community in the way they think and the way a system is run.
People who are powerful are secondarily the government, but primarily the people who the government acts in the interest for. And almost all of the time, those are the rich, the white, the males of society who have enough power and sway to sort of bend the priorities of the government to their priorities. And so those are the people that hold power in a society.
We started this project unaware of what we would find. After completing this 3-week immersive course on cultural bias through the lenses of class, religion, and race, we have formulated a deeper understanding of the divide between the working and ruling classes within the small city government of Twin Falls, Idaho. But how do these issues compare to our local government in the large, liberal, and progressive city of San Francisco, California? We started this project not knowing what we would find, and we left with something much bigger than just us. In order to create change, we need to stand together and fight for the things we believe in. Voting is just one way that we can take the power back for the people. If you abstain from voting, you relinquish the small amount of power you are granted. So as we get older and have the means to make a change, we can't just stand idly by and expect people to make changes for us. It is our civic duty to not only vote, but to raise awareness for the causes and the people we believe in. So really, who holds the power? We all hold the power, and we just need to learn how to exercise it.